Welcome, Nerd Herfers. Grab yourself a cigar, grab your favorite whiskey, pull up a chair with us, and get ready for another episode of Nerd Herfers. Along with Micah Donahoe and Brent Williams, I am Larry Brantley, and as always, we are just three middle-aged guys who love whiskey and cigars and all the nerdy shit we loved when we were kids, and we like to talk it to death. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still recovering from last week's episode.
Me too.
Yeah, I had to go, like, after we wrapped that night, I had to go upstairs to the balcony and just calm down with another cigar and another glass of whiskey and a viewing of A New Hope.
Oh.
So
Well
I
played.
wanted to get the prequels out of my system.
So I have to ask, what did you think of the ending music for the last?
Oh, amazing.
I,
I was so excited to hear that.
I'm never, ever disappointed.
I am not either.
Your choices of outro music are just on point every single time, and I love
It takes a lot for me not to fast forward ahead of time just to go see what it was, because I kind of want the build up.
Never mind the damn episode.
Yeah, so I don't even want to listen to the episode. I just
What
want to
did
see
he
what the
do?
outro music is, and then come back and listen.
Well, I
to
had a
it.
hard time actually. I was going to do this weird disco version of Star Wars and then like throw some Jar Jar
I
Binks.
remember that one.
Yeah, and then throw some Jar Jar Binks in there, right? And I actually found this song called "The Anthem of Jar Jar Binks," and it was kind of funny, but it was
Oh.
also very monotonous, and eventually got
the
very
kind of
annoying.
thing that would make people
mean,
would tune
it-
out,
it was-
even though they're at the end of the
It was,
episode.
yeah,
They're
it was
like,
good.
well, we
it
can
was good
dispense
for
with
its
that.
namesake because it was monotonous and
Oh,
annoying.
yes, much
So,
like Jar Jar.
anyway,
well,
and then I remembered that, and I was like, I want to play this whole song. The whole song is just amazing. You know, I don't have time for that anyway.
well, we'll do that on the live tour.
Yeah, there you go.
That'll be Brent Williams and his one-man band will be our opener. And then
There
it's
you
like,
go.
well, hey, Mike and I are going to come out and vamp to the audience for a while because Brent's backstage.
That's
Getting-
Nerd Herfers Tour 2050.
There you go. There you go. We'll all be doing the Aluminum Walker thing. We'll call it the Aluminum Walker Tour.
There you go.
It's an
All right.
aluminum Falcon.
So it's a brand new episode and a brand new topic. But first, of course, we've got a cigar picked by Brent tonight.
Yep.
A whiskey picked by me, and our topic of conversation, Mr. Donahoe brought that one up. So I think, as always, we're going to start with the cigar. So, Brent, what did you get for us, buddy?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say I deserve an award for the level of restraint I showed this past week and not smoking one of these ahead of time.
Oh,
Well, okay.
well, I'm glad we bumped up the episode recording.
right.
Right?
Yeah. Also, we're gonna revisit an old friend tonight.
All right.
They put out something new, and I know we were all anxious to try it. So,
Oh, I'm in
Are you
complete
getting
suspense.
the
I
tingles?
have.
I'm getting the tingles.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I get the
what it's at.
tingles. I just have absolutely no idea where
the
it's
cigar
going.
we're trying tonight, Ecuador Habano wrapper,
Yeah.
Mexican San Andreas binder.
Oh, hello.
So I'm expecting lots of oily goodness. Filler is Nicaraguan and Connecticut broadleaf.
Oh,
So it looks like a mild cigar, but I think it's going to pack a little bit of a punch.
it sounds like it.
So we'll see.
Right. How exciting.
So without further ado, and hopefully you haven't tried one of these yet.
I'm not going to tell you if I have or I haven't. I'm not going to ruin it for you. In your mind, it'll always be,
It
Doing
actually
this for
took
the
me a
first
while to find these, believe it or not,
well,
because they were new enough.
okay.
Anyway, the Rojas Street Taco Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, awesome!
Oh my God.
I'm
Okay.
so excited.
So literally pre-show, Mike and I are in there, and I said to Brent, or sorry, I said to Micah, hey, maybe we should go help Brent set up. And Micah went, that's a terrible idea. Let Rain Man do his thing. But I told him that I was at my local cigar shop earlier in the week. I was over at El Dorado Fine Cigars, which is right off of El Dorado Boulevard and Highway 75 in McKinney, Texas. And I saw that they had just come out, and I bought one, but I have not smoked it yet.
Yeah.
So I'm
Good.
very
Excellent.
excited to get into
Yeah, and I heard you
the
guys talking
Rojas
about this too.
Cinco de Mayo. Oh my goodness.
Heard you guys talking about this too, and I was like, I felt like I was missing out. You know, I was part of like a really special club for a second there, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, did you have the Cinco de Mayo? Yeah, I had it. Yeah,
Yeah,
did you
and
have
this
it?
is
Yeah, I
a-
had it. I'm like, I didn't have
This
it.
is a 6x52 Toro, which I believe is the biggest cigar they make.
That is the
I'm
biggest
mistaken.
ring-gauge that
Yeah.
Noel's ever done. Yeah.
All
So
Anyway, I love of course, the label is amazing.
oh yeah. Well, you can't beat that logo, and
Right.
and then the colors that he did for the
Or
Slim
maybe
Limited
we
edition.
could.
Oh man. Okay, guys, just so you know, Micah is a bit of an artiste, and Okay.
Oh, this smells amazing.
That does smell amazing. Ecuador and Sumatra, you said.
No. Ecuador and Habano.
Ecuador and Habano. Okay.
Habano, yeah. And
Oh,
San
okay.
Andreas
Yes,
binder.
I'm seeing the difference in the color now. But
Andreas or Andres?
Andreas. San
Andres.
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 Andres. If you want to do it correctly.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man,
It
it
goes
smells
with
good.
Tony Montana again.
That's right.
I just can't help it. Okay.
Well, I mean,
now,
it kind of looks like it.
I also think that we need to impart some knowledge on the Nerdherfer Nation
Okay.
about the different cuts for cigars and why people use the different cuts. Because I see that question asked all the time.
All right.
So tonight I brought my V cutter.
Okay.
You like the straight cut.
I do.
Micah uses a punch.
Yep.
Well, Brent, tell us why you like to do a V cut.
Well, I like the V cut because you get the draw of the straight cut, which is one of the reasons you do the straight cut. People think you get more of the flavor of the cigar. You get a better draw and more flavor. V cut kind of focuses that on the draw. So you get a nice draw like you do on a straight cut, but the flavor gets more focused.
I can kind of see that. I mean, because
It's
with a
getting
punch,
Yeah.
I'm getting more of a focused hit as well.
Yeah, exactly. And have you ever done like a figure eight punch where you punch two of those?
I have not.
Yeah. There's all kinds of fancy things.
Might
You
There,
can do.
there are many fancy things, and I of
Mhm.
course do the traditional straight cut.
Yeah.
And I do it mostly because that's how I learned.
Yeah.
It took me forever to get good at a straight cut because you know this is like this is my lighter from Calibri, and it's basically a little guillotine, and it's starting to see some wear. But you know, when you're doing a straight cut, you do have to be careful because you can do it at an angle,
Yeah.
and then it just feels weird.
That's actually
Done that.
a valid cut though, the angle cut. I forgot what that's called.
Now
it's called
it called
I
the
will
angle
do
cut?
on a
They call
bellicoso.
it like an English cut or something like that.
On a
or
bellicoso,
Scotch cut,
I
something
will
like that?
I will do that. I
Uh-huh.
learned that from my friend Hector Becerra.
Yeah.
So a bellicoso or a torpedo cigar, as it's
Yeah.
called, has got a tapered end, and so he showed me how to do a proper one of those, and so I will do that on certain cigars. But cigars like this that have a rounded cap, traditional rounded cap, I prefer a straight cut, and I prefer a straight cut because I just like the draw. I
Right.
like an easy draw.
Yeah.
Especially if you have tried a cigar you've never tried before and it's packed really tight. If I do a V cut or a punch,
Yeah.
it's like sucking a golf ball through a garden hose. I'm not getting anything.
I'm right there with you. So as I do a punch most of the time, I actually do have a straight cutter in there for emergencies.
Just in case.
Because if I ever get something that's packed so tight and I'm not getting any kind of a draw, I don't want to take a pin and start jabbing it in there and
Yeah.
working things
And we
around.
don't want you to do that, Mike.
Yeah, well, the world doesn't want me to.
I think you're right.
And so when that happens, that's when I go straight cut. And if I still can't get a draw at it, then I'm kind of kneading it. And I'm like, come on,
Come on,
baby,
baby,
come on.
come
And you just
on.
take a razor and slice it open.
That's true. Then
Smoke it
I
from the
take it,
inside
I
out.
It's called
slice
the
it.
convertible cigar.
That's right.
Guys.
I slice it all the way
It's a
down the
drop
middle
top.
like a hot dog bun, and I rip it open, and then I just use my torch to
And I
go
put a
all the
little
way
relish
top
in
to
there.
bottom, and then I just hold it under
can,
my
can
nose.
we get to it, boys? Because
Yes.
I'm
Oh, come
super
on,
excited
step in my
to
joke.
get this. We are all doing our various cuts, and I'm going to do a cold draw on this bad boy.
I want to see what your V looks
That
like.
foot smells really
Look at
good.
that.
Or I'm sorry. Yo.
And you can do what's called a cross cut. If
Mm,
you cut it the other way,
mm,
it'll make the cross.
mm.
Okay, may I say that also when you actually do use a punch and you get a really solid, clear draw off it, that is a tribute to the maker.
Well, I've said this before on the show, and I will say it again. I mean, I don't know a lot of cigar makers. I know Noel. I don't know him well enough to say we're good friends, but I would say that we're friends. And consistently,
Yeah.
the way he teaches his teams to roll, you're always getting a well-rolled cigar. It doesn't matter what blend it is. It doesn't matter what line it is. That is one thing you can almost always count on in a Rojas cigar. And I've done my cold draw, and I can taste that
So
Habano.
what did we get on the nose? We didn't even. We'll go. Yeah, it
I'm
smells good. We
getting-
didn't-
I'm getting hay again.
Hay. Yep.
For sure. But there's something sweet in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like dried fruit.
Yeah, I can definitely.
It's
smell
not it's not what I'd call chocolatey, but
No.
that sweetness to me is more like dried fruit.
Interesting.
Oh, it's making my mouth water, you guys.
Mhm.
All right.
All right, enough talk. Let's light.
I brought my World War II
Yeah.
flamethrower tonight.
Again, it's a little windy out here, so
Thank goodness
caution.
for butane.
You guys, that's a good cigar. That Habano hits right up front.
Spicy.
Oh man, that's
It's
so
almost
good.
like it's got a little bit of a bite to it.
I'm getting a little bit of spice at the back end
Mm-hmm.
of in terms of mouthfeel, but that is such a good blend. Oh my goodness. You got Habano, you got San Andreas.
That retrohale is nice and
It's
tasty too.
you know, you were right. It doesn't look up front. I mean, up front it looks like let's call it a medium leaning toward mild, just in terms of the color of the wrapper. But that is not how it hits.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of spice
Yeah.
Yeah.
on the finish. Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh,
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
was-
spice. Yeah.
Mm.
Almost
All
like
right.
almost
Well,
like the street taco.
thank you
Mhm.
for the Rojas Street Taco Cinco de Mayo limited edition.
Exciting.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say to all our nerd herfers right now that if you are listening to the show and you are into cigars, if your local cigar shop does not carry Rojas, talk to them, because believe me, everybody in that shop is going to start loving on the Rojas. So they are available, let's say, nationwide. Okay, it was my turn to bring the whiskey this week, and we are stepping outside the bourbon trail, boys.
That's all right.
Let me give you a little background on this distillery. I would also like to preface this by saying this is a Scotch I have never had.
Whoa.
And that is a large statement, because I have drunk a lot of Scotch. But a little background on tonight's distillery. So, of course, I have brought a single malt Scotch, but not from Speyside, which is typically where most of the distilleries are in Scotland. The reason for that is Speyside is the area of Scotland up in the Highlands that per capita gets more sunlight than any other part of Scotland. Consequently, the malt that they use in the process gets a lot more sunshine, so it tends to be dry and crispy, and that's when you get those notes of honey and vanilla and that kind of thing. This, on the other hand, is what they call coastal Highland. So it's just outside the Speyside area on a coastal area of Scotland called Sand End. And this distillery was founded in 1875 by a local businessman named James Moyer. This sister of this Scotch that we're trying tonight, this is one of the core lines. The sister Scotch of this, which was a limited edition from last year, actually won Whiskey Advocates Whiskey of the Year. And that's where they take all whiskeys and judge them against each other, not just a single class. And it's a very moderate price point, but the distillery is called Glenglassaugh. Glenglassaugh. Let's all say it together. Glenglassaugh. And this is their core line 12-year Scotch.
The rest of your presentation has to be in the Scottish accent.
So
Yeah.
absolutely. And so this is what we are going to have tonight. Now, so this has been aged for a minimum of 12 years.
Oh, wow.
The bottle looks very
That is a
nice.
pretty
It's
bottle.
a handcrafted bottle,
Yeah.
hand-blown glass,
Oh.
which is kind of cool. And the reason there's no ice in your glasses is because this is a Scotch I've never tried before. So we are all going to have our first taste of this neat
I'm fine with that.
and get the full effect.
That's how I started off. I didn't start having ice in my glass until bourbon, actually.
Right.
But then I
Now,
would drink that neat too.
sure. A lot of, there's a lot of snobbishness around how whiskey should be drunk. It's funny, the guys who actually aren't the snobs are typically the people who make the whiskey.
Right.
So I once had the pleasure of meeting the master distiller for the Glenlivet at the time. And I was asking him about that. And he said, surprisingly, in his travels around the world, it's more of the Americans who tend to be snobs and go, oh, you got to drink your Scotch neat. If you're putting water in it or you're putting ice in it, you're just killing it. And he didn't do it quite like in that voice, but I just decided to do it for dramatic effect. And I said to him, well, how do you drink your Scotch? And he said, typically in Scotland, if you go to a pub and order Scotch, they will serve it to you neat. And then they will put a clay pot of spring water right next to it, cold spring water. He said, because when you put a little water in there, or you put a rock or whatever, it's going to mellow it out a little bit. You're going to get a little bit more of the nose. So I'm going to pour this for you boys.
Thank you, sir.
I love that sound. It means good times are ahead.
I'm interested to see. Usually 12 years. That's kind of my favorite age spot. Like Macallan. Like I'll drink a 16, of course, because I'm not a snob. But
Well,
I
good
love
for you.
Yeah, but I love the 12 because it's young enough that it still has a little bit of a bite to it.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so let's give this a nose, boys.
Honey.
Yes, right off the nose. It's
Yeah.
Mhm.
Super
I
strong.
got honey.
Now I'm wondering if my palate's a little bit damaged from getting over being sick, but am I getting any citrus off that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, I would call it like California floral.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in an orange grove or a lemon grove, there's
Mm-hmm.
that pervasive smell. It's very pleasant.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things about doing this show with you fellas, because my first experience with brown liquor was Scotch, but it was Johnny Walker Black, and that was my whole
poor man.
hey, that
Goodness.
was my whole world. And you know what? It's almost nostalgic. So as I became an adult, I picked up a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. I enjoyed it, but then spending time with the two of you and our friends in Oklahoma when it comes time, it just kind of opened that up. So I'm kind of excited. And if I ask more questions during this one, it's not for the sake of the audience. It's for me.
That's fair. All right, we're going in for a taste,
Do
boys.
it.
Here we go. Here's to you.
Wow. Smoky.
All right, so creme brulee. Definitely more of that floral note.
Yep.
But tell me if you get this. On the finish, I'm definitely getting sea salt.
There's something kind of bitter on the finish, and I can't decide if it's lemon or something salty like that. I'm leaning towards lemon.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Well, live with it a little bit. See how you're doing.
But I agree with you on the creme brulee.
I love it.
Because I mean that toasty toasty
And
part of there with the slight sweet on the honey lends to that creamy creme brulee kind of.
Well, and it's got that 12-year bite to it.
For me, my sweet spotted Scotch is about anywhere between 16 and 18.
Yeah.
Because at that point it does, if it's been in the cask that long, it turns just a little bit of a corner. It does mellow out. But it also, to me, when the blender's doing it right, everything comes together in a harmony that is just this side of heaven. So I will tell you that one of my favorite single malts of all time is the Glenlivet 18. Now it retails for something like $175 a bottle, and it can be very often hard to find, but it is one of the best done 18-year single malts that I've ever had in my life.
So I got to tell you guys, I took a hit off the cigar while I was after I had finished on my sip with the Scotch, and this is kind of weird, but the first thing that just popped into my head was French toast without the syrup.
Ooh.
So like
Nice.
you know how some people will put like maybe a little brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, and these two flavors combined was giving me a little bit of a.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think quite without trying, we've managed a good pairing.
I think we need to quit pretending we know what we're talking about and get on with our topic.
No, actually, I like when we hang on these things because I mean I'm not even going to pretend to our audience. I am so much less experienced when it comes to some of these things.
Do you think that is Micah's way of saying that we're more alcoholic than he is?
I think so.
Okay.
I like to think it's more experience and well-rounded.
Yeah, just keep digging that hole, buddy. So we have started off with a fantastic cigar, the Noel Rojas Cinco de Mayo, provided by Brent. I feel like I've done a passable job with a good single malt Scotch from Glenglassaugh. Micah, it is your turn to tell us what we are going to nerd out about tonight, my friend.
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit more open-ended than some of our other ones because this could be construed as something that was either very personal to you as a child, then translated to an adult. So the topic of today is media, meaning movies, music, books, whatever, that meant something to you as a child that means something completely different to you as an adult.
Completely different.
Yeah. So how did you interpret it as a child?
I see.
And then when you became an adult, how did it change for the better or for the worse?
Okay. All right.
Or you know what? It doesn't even have to be better or worse. It could just be different, whatever your choice.
Well, I have
My
a couple
sincere
of
hope
thoughts
is
on
that whatever it is, it's different because you're way older than you.
Okay. Well, then let me just go ahead and throw this on the table to contradict that because what Tron meant to me as a child means the exact same thing to me as an adult, and I'm just in love with it. So, but that's
Okay.
for another day.
All right.
No, that's
Do
actually
you
that's
want
actually
me
a
to
valid point.
extinguish that
No,
one?
I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Well, who wants to start, boys?
Brent.
I mean, that's a. Actually, when Micah first proposed this topic, I actually had a hard time with it. I was trying to think, and then I started watching Battle of the Planets,
Ah, yes.
which I just worshipped as a kid, and I didn't realize how bad the editing was.
Yeah, but you love bad.
I'll put it that way. Yeah, but I love bad. So it does satisfy my need for crappy shows. But yeah, definitely that hit totally different. And then I saw the remakes that the Power Rangers guy did, Saban or Saban or Saban or however you say his name.
Saban.
And he changed a lot of the storylines. He also changed all the voices, and it just wasn't the same. I mean, it was like not good different, like two different, like bad different. So anyway, I went back to watching the originals because
I have very fond memories of Battle of the Planets, and if I'm not mistaken, it has gone under various names depending on what country you're in. So I think
Right.
it started off with Gotcha Man,
yeah.
and then what was now the name of the team was G-Force.
Yep.
Right, but
Correct.
did it ever use the title G-Force ever?
I don't think so.
I couldn't
Mm-mm.
remember if it did or not.
I mean, they called themselves G-Force on the show,
Right.
but there was never a title of that series that was G-Force.
And I remember it being one of my favorites when I was growing up too. So it's been one that I've really wanted to revisit, and it's very difficult to revisit because you can't buy it and you can't stream it. And the only place that I ever found it was in loving collections on playlists on YouTube.
Yeah, that's where I found it. Yeah, actually, you pointed me to one of them.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, I started watching that one.
Cool.
When I was a kid, and I mean a little kid, one of my first introductions to science fiction was a Japanese-produced live-action television show called Ultraman.
Oh, Utura.
And it's funny that I've brought Ultraman up before, and every time I do, he has to do that.
He does that
I have
sound
to.
every time.
single
Ultraman.
time. So I
just
can-
love it. I love the way it sounds.
I can clearly remember, as a kid sitting in front. It was usually before having to go catch the school bus in the morning. I would sit there and watch an episode of Ultraman, and the idea of a special secret science team who investigated monsters and other strange goings on, which apparently, Japan was just rife with in the 60s. There was a kaiju popping up every minute.
Yeah.
And then there was this character, Ultraman, who was an alien from outer space who somehow became symbiotically connected to one of the guys in the science team, whose name was Hayata. And whenever, it got too much for the team, he would run off into the bushes. He would push this little pen-like thing, and he would transform into Ultraman, who was the size of a kaiju, and he was like silver and red and had a slick back Rocket Man head or helmet. And he had this jewel in the center of his uniform because he could only be Ultraman for 3 minutes.
Right.
That was never explained.
Yeah.
Why it was just 3 minutes, but it always lent some drama to the
Just
show
a
because
sense of urgency.
he'd be in the middle of a
was it
fight.
3 or 2?
It was 3.
Okay.
And his thing starts to flash, which means he's about to not have any energy. And so can he finish the fight and all the things? And then of course he does, and he would fly away. And of course they spun around Japan in a rocket ship or a rocket plane that had flames coming out the back. And they drove what was then considered a very cool car, and they had these cool uniforms. So I loved all of that as a kid. And I do have to say that I give the television show Ultraman credit for igniting my interest in all things science fiction and, then fantasy, although it was reading that turned me on to fantasy. And I recently had the opportunity to go back and watch a bunch of old Ultraman episodes. A friend of mine has them on DVD. And he knew what a big fan I was when I was a kid. And they're just awful. Like, awful doesn't even begin to describe how bad the production value, the
like
the
bad production
acting.
value.
Well, you talked about the paper
Doctor
mache
Who.
eyes on the kaiju. How
Oh my God,
That was
it's
that a
so
lazy eye
bad.
stuff, yeah.
Like you can see the zipper on the back
Yeah, I
of
was
the
going to ask,
kaiju.
is it so bad that it's like Doctor Who season 1? And I'm not talking about what is season 9, but actual season 1.
It's bad.
yeah,
It's
like
where
the
really
60s,
bad.
like
Where
the
you see
black
the
and white.
pyramids
Yeah.
on the curtain waving.
Yes.
Yeah.
The rocket plane or the rocket jet that I was such a fan of as a kid, when you look at it as an adult, the first thing you think of is that thing is seconds away from just catching fire.
Ah,
Because I think they
Yeah.
just put lit firecrackers to make the
Yeah.
jets.
very likely.
You know, the uniforms are hideous by any standard. I'm sure they were hideous in the 60s and nobody said anything. It was just comical to me. And so we had a really good laugh over something that as kids we thought was super duper cool.
Well,
along the same vein,
Yeah.
Space 1999.
Oh, Martin Landau.
Yeah, I found it. We mentioned it in one of our episodes, and I found it on Amazon Prime and started watching it. And my cousin and I, we worshipped that show as kids. We had the model rockets. We were totally into model rockets. So we had, the Estes model rocket of the
Yeah.
Eagle.
I had the Space 1999 lunchbox.
Yeah. we had the
I
models
just saw
and
that at a
stuff.
gun show last weekend.
Oh my gosh! And
I
and
don't
we,
know why
we,
that's funny.
we loved that show so much. We wrote our own fan fiction in the form of comic books.
Wow.
So we illustrated our own comic books and stuff. And that was like one of our thing is because we didn't see each other all the time. So we would always try to get the comic book ready so we could show it to our cousin the next time we saw him, right? So anyway, I started watching. I forgot how utterly fantastically bad the opening theme song is from
Oh,
Space
yeah.
Mountain. I mean, it reminds me of Hooked on Classics. Do you remember that?
Oh,
That
yeah.
old-
Yeah.
Okay. So it starts off with this classical dun dun, and then it goes, and then it has the violin going the doo-doo-doo as the spaceship falls.
Yes.
Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It
Yeah.
goes wow, chicka waka. Oh my god, it is
Oh,
so
it's that
great.
kind of show.
Oh my gosh, it is so amazing. And when you were talking about the waving backdrop, I remember I was watching this one episode a couple days ago, and the same thing. Like there's this like android type thing is supposed to be standing in front of this big globe and a ship, and you could see the curls on the side of the of the
Oh,
backdrop. Oh my gosh, so bad. And of course, in the 70s, for some reason, every sci-fi show in the 70s thought that everyone in the future would be wearing day suits.
mm-hmm.
So that's what all the uniforms were. That's so funny.
Some version of a jumper.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Oh my gosh.
Well, I had to say one thing about the Ultraman thing is that for those of you who haven't read Ready Player One, and if
read
you
it.
have,
I have,
awesome,
yep.
because there is a wonderful tribute, love letter, if you will, to kaiju and mechanical monsters and
Yep.
everything that they get to choose and go into battle. You only get a little taste of that in the movie. It's forgiven. But in the book, it's actually touching. And I'm not going to elaborate on it. I want our listeners...
I have read Ready Player One by
Okay.
Ernest Cline.
Yes.
It is a brilliant book to read.
Because there's a
Um,
character inside the movie that did not survive
Yeah.
because they took that route. So, and it was touching.
Yeah, that's
To a
very
geek.
cool. Yeah, well, yeah, to a geek.
Yeah.
To a
Okay,
nerd.
so before we move too
absolutely.
far
This
off,
make-believe person died. I'm so sad.
hey, I'm like that. But in regards to Battle of the Planets, so is that kind of the full piece of it for you? Is that when you watched it as a kid, it was great. You watched it as an adult, and it was just crap production.
Well, I mean, it's still entertaining, even watching it now. But I just, you could tell that, we talked about one time how they reversion shows, those anime, especially those old anime and stuff, and even today, those are all reversions, so they better fit the zeitgeist of the
Yes.
Western culture,
okay.
right? So you could tell either they didn't have a lot to work with, or they were editing it for us in Japan. Because some of the cuts and the way the story jumps around, it's just crazy. It's like
Yeah.
sometimes, you kind of get whiplash trying to follow the
I
scenes and
think
stuff.
somebody who worked on that show that was going, it's okay, we're making this for American viewers, but let's show them what Japanese, cinema is all about, even though it was a TV show. So I think somebody got delusions of Akira Kurosawa.
Mm.
Because it does. It's kind of ping pongs
Yeah.
But then you know what? So did Speed Racer,
Oh yeah.
That's true.
and it was from the same era.
Talk about fast dialogue.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Oh, great
Well, you
techno
have
song
to
came out of the
remember-
'90s, where Speed and Trixie are having a moment.
Yeah.
You have to remember that back when they were doing dubs of those old animes, which we didn't even call it anime then, there were no computers. They could not slow the roll. They could not compress the voices or whatever. They just had actors in there who had to match the mouth flaps as best they could.
I wonder if that comes like, in some languages, going from one language to another, like everyone has euphemisms, colloquialisms, whatever, where you can say a lot in very few words, but in other languages that are more verbose, it takes a lot more to say the same thing.
Absolutely.
So I wonder if they just had like a lot of mouth flaps and they just had to fill the gaps.
They
basically.
do.
Yeah.
That's that. And that actually still goes on today, because one thing the English language can be famous for is brevity.
Yeah.
I'm a voice actor by trade, and so
Wait,
even now,
seriously?
yeah, for real.
Wait, is that what you do?
Well, I keep it under wraps. I don't
Okay,
tell other
Yeah.
people.
Okay.
But even
You haven't
now
done
in
anything
the
we've heard
studio,
or seen. have you?
I'll read a piece of dialogue and go, that's just ridiculous. He said the same thing 3 times in the same paragraph because we got to match the flaps. So
Yeah, I can see
it's
that.
funny. So I wanted to go back to the cigar real quick because we're
First third.
in the first third,
Mhm.
and I would like to get boys' thoughts on how it's going for you so far.
Oh, I'm starting.
Sure, why not?
You're just staring at me. Both of you are staring at me.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy. Stop it.
Go put your shirt back on.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Sake.
That's one. If you're gonna tee it up like that.
That's one. I believe I'm starting to get a little cocoa actually now. I can really feel or taste the influence of the binder in this.
Yeah.
It's got that nice oily mouthfeel.
Yes.
I'm actually starting to see a little bit of those little white granules on my ash, which means you got some nice oil.
Oh,
going on
yeah.
there. Yeah.
That's the magic hour.
I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of Mexican San Andres, and I think this may be the first cigar I've ever had where it was used as a binder and not as a wrapper.
Yeah.
Noel, you're never going to listen to this, but damn it, son. So proud.
Well, and I got to give credit there too because San Andres is the typical wrapper, like you were just saying, which lends a lot more sweet to the flavor and the taste that you're getting, and I get it like right on the back end. It's so minor, so this has really mellowed out for me quite a bit.
Mhm.
I am getting hints of tobacco, which are pretty good.
That's
Stop.
one.
Oh, come on. We're never going to make it through any show without the shirt or the tobacco.
No,
Never.
I think we've established that.
But
already.
definitely the cocoa, the unsweetened cocoa, even though that there is a sweet hit on the back end, but still getting that hay, still getting that kind of toasty.
This is, for me, this is one of those cigars that is such a good blend that there's not a single note that stands out to me. So
Yeah.
it is a wonderfully blended cigar. So
I would agree
all
with
of the things that you guys have said, yes to that, but I'm getting them all in the proper proportions.
Yeah.
And I seek balance in my cigars. I'm not interested in a one-note cigar. A lot of guys are. And to me, that's just palate laziness. They're going to smoke the same thing forever. They don't sleep around because they like what they like, and that's fine. But man, when I find a guy like Noel who really blend a fine cigar,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the hell out of this.
I'm becoming more and more of a fan of the Nicaraguan filler. I know that was in our last cigar that I brought, and I'm used to it by now. But
I told you we'd get you there.
yeah, tasting it with other things. You said Connecticut
Broadleaf.
broadleaf.
Broadleaf, sorry.
Yeah, tasting how the Nicaraguan filler interacts with the other types of fillers and the flavors they produce is a real nice treat.
That on the retro hill now in that first third, that spice for me has turned into white pepper.
I can get that. I
Yeah,
get that.
which is really, that's actually very pleasant. People, I don't know, on the retro hill, you would think that would burn your nose or something, but it's actually really pleasant. It's like
Yeah.
just spicy enough.
Yeah, I
It's
feel
a
if I was
spicy-
a little bit
it's a
more
spicy.
inexperienced and I was hitting this extra specially hard, that it would really
Well, again, I'm very
really almost be
surprised.
offensive.
I see that you guys have already removed your bands,
Yeah.
and I deliberately when I get a cigar that I love, I deliberately don't because it forces me to slow down
Well,
because I don't want to get to, but also because I just love these bands.
yeah, honestly, I took mine off because they were already loose,
Oh, is that
mine
right?
was a little bit loose,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you why.
which I love actually. One thing I can't stand:
Too much glue on the wrapper.
too much glue and taking part of the leaf off, trying to
Yeah.
get the band off.
So, mine's more from a collector's standpoint. I usually take my wrapper off because if I start to smoke a cigar that I really, really enjoy, I'll save my labels. And I have kind of a very large to-go mug of sorts that I glue my labels to,
Oh,
and then seal
cool.
them off. So I can bring it another time for you guys to see. I should bring it for
I
water purposes.
I have a gallon bag full of labels because I do the same thing. I save my labels,
Gallon bag.
and I'm
I'm afraid I'm going to damage the label. That's
Yeah.
why I take it.
well, and one of the things I want to do with it was I have some wooden ashtrays lined up. I need to get in the shop and finish, and one of them I want to cover in the bands.
That's a good idea.
So
That'd be cool.
it'll look kind of cool.
You know what? We should sell those on our website, nerdherfers.com.
That's right.
Okay,
So
let's
we've
get
covered-
back on track here,
Yep,
boys.
we've covered yours, your topic. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to
Well, I mean,
that particular subject?
pretty
Battle
much
of the Planets?
anything, any of those shows that I loved as a kid. I mean, of course they're going to be different as a grown up.
Agreed. I still think, though, that you can.
Well, what I will say though, agreeing with you on your point, when you're a kid, you're not looking at that crap. You're not going, "Oh, the edits are too
No, you
fast
are-
or the
you
dialogue's
are-
too fast."
Yeah.
You're just totally
You're
engulfed
just-
in the
It's
world.
all imagination,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You are, and when you're young, as we were way back when, not so much Micah. We still believe that like being part of a super secret research team and flying around in a rocket jet was an option. Like that was a career option.
Oh, totally.
So I was gonna.
You don't believe that now? Because I believe that now.
How's that working out for you?
Oh
One
my
thing-
gosh, you should see my ship.
Okay.
One thing I think is funny is
I'll
as I'm
fly here
watching
next time.
as I'm watching Space 1999, and you go back and you look at all these shows that were made in the 60s and 70s, they way overestimated where our technology was going to be by now.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, hit him too.
Well, let's try it. You want to try it with the rock?
We can certainly do that. Do you guys want to?
Let's try it with the rock. I just want
With
to
the
see
rock?
the difference.
Yeah.
That is an
We'll
ice
cut.
break.
We'll cut here. This is a nice break. You're gonna have to do that, Brent.
Spit it out, you son of a bitch. Spit it out.
A gnat just flew into Micah's. I don't know if he's gonna eat it or just
I'm
be
debating.
done. Why don't you finish what you got in there, partner, and I'll just go bring your rock. How about that? Let's
Bring
not.
rocks.
Let's
Yeah.
not. I shall bring rocks. I'll be back.
Time for an ice break.
I come bearing rocks. Rock for you. Rock
Yo,
for
Joey,
you.
I got the rocks.
Thank you, darling.
You're welcome, dear. All right.
Thanks, sir.
More or less?
That's good.
All right.
I'm gonna let that. I'm gonna let that melt a
I'm
smidge.
gonna let that mellow just a skosh.
Just a smidge.
Gauche.
Just
A
to see what
smidge
it
or a
does.
skosh because they're not the same thing, people.
Okay.
At all. Hey, hand me that cork there, would you?
Oh,
buddy?
yes, sir.
I don't want another gnat to mess your day up. So to continue,
Yes.
I would like to say this, that when you first posited this as a topic of discussion, I think I did what maybe, I know you did, and maybe you did too, was, well, that's the way that's going to go. It's a thing I really dug as a kid that I find ridiculous as an adult. However, I was having a conversation with my lovely wife this afternoon. We were FaceTiming. She's in Florida on business. And when I was telling her what we were going to talk about tonight, and I told her what I was going to talk about, she said, "That's great, but do you know what you know really well, and you know it from two different media, is Marvel."
Yeah.
And it's true. When I was a kid, I can't remember when I became a bona fide collector of Marvel comic books, but it had to be before I was 10 years old. And I was a huge fan of the X-Men.
Yep.
I was a huger fan of Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man, because it was the first superhero ever that was a teenager, like I was going to be in a few years, with real world problems.
Right. Wasn't revered
No
by the
fortress,
public.
yeah, no Fortress of Solitude. No, everybody was trying to hound on him all the time, and I love that. I love the street level Marvel characters like Daredevil, and even like Luke Cage. Of course, I loved the Avengers, Captain America, all of them. So I collected the comic books, and And every so often, during my childhood, I'll say during my adolescence, somebody would try to do a Marvel hero on a television show or a movie. And even as a young person, they were so
Oh,
awful.
the 1970s Spider-Man.
Yes, where he
Oh.
scrabbles up a wall.
Yeah. And his web is like just a big thick
It
cotton
was a rope. It was
And
a giant rope.
every time he shot the web, it was in reverse. It was just a shot
Yes.
in reverse. It was so bad.
I mean, and that's one of those, like, okay, you're turning in age now, so let's call that between the ages of 10 and say 60. You're starting to notice things now, right? You've pretty much, if you're going to be a nerd, you've hit that spot by now. Like, that's your comfort zone. Then that's what you're going to be. That's fine. But now you're starting to pay more attention to stuff like that. And it becomes more difficult to suspend your disbelief than it was when you were younger than that, right? Because the world is now encroaching, and you see, awful Spider-Man scrabbling up a wall. There was also a very short-lived series of Captain America with the acrylic shield.
Yeah.
And he rode on a motorcycle.
Yes.
And it was just this dude who was like an ex-bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Couldn't act his way out of a wet paper bag. Awful. Just awful.
Same thing with that 1980s Captain America movie. So just for the record, my top 3 Marvel are Captain America, Spider-Man, and Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
That trinity for me is just, I will defend it up and down all day. So I found that on Prime or something like that, it was streaming like an 80s Captain America, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Captain America. So I turn it on, and this guy's such a pansy. And the way that this guy's playing the character is just pansy-esque. And I think I got maybe 20 minutes into it before I was like, that's not Cap, and I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Because when Cap first came out, Stan Lee was writing him. One of the things that I loved about Captain America the most was that as opposed to any other character, you have your story, here's his formula, here's Stan's formula. You have Captain America come in, he sees injustice, he's going to battle injustice. It looks for a moment like Captain America has been slightly defeated or averted. And then the bad guy gets off to his secondary location. And he's like, haha, I have circumvented the dude with the shield, and haha. And then Cap, undoubtedly, every single effing time, he either comes crashing through a door, through a window, or through a wall and says, punk, we ain't done. And he comes in and he starts pummeling this guy, and he pummels them until they are ready for jail, where they're like, please take me to jail because I can't stand the way you
because
punch.
I'm a bad guy and I must pay for my crimes.
Oh, no. I don't want to feel Cap's fist in my nuts anymore.
I wonder if, like pre-production, they just shot like 30 different scenes of him crashing through something and they just stuck them in every show.
I don't
I'm
know.
okay with that.
I just know
But
that
his
during,
persistence, that's my point, is that
Yeah.
his persistence is what drew me to the Cap character.
Right.
Look, well, one show, not Marvel, DC actually, I think that none of us have any complaints about. Linda Carter, Wonder Woman.
Absolutely.
Oh.
100%.
Yep.
Praise
That is
be to
hallowed.
Linda.
That is hallowed ground.
It is hallowed
We
ground.
will not touch that.
No, we will not.
And for as
Absolutely
bad
not.
as Wonder Woman 84 was, their tribute
Yeah.
to Linda
To Linda Carter.
was absolutely amazing as some legendary Amazonian. I mean, I just sat
did-
there.
I
Oh
did-
my God.
I did love
so
that.
good.
I disliked that movie in so many ways, but I loved that part. Now, one could make the argument, and I would, that Bill Bixby as Bruce Banner the Hulk, that was a show that worked for me only because it was actually a well-written show.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was.
They didn't go overboard with anything else. The Hulk was almost never in it. He only came in the third act and only for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bill Bixby carried that show, and it was the story of a man who was haunted, and who doesn't have a home and doesn't have a place and doesn't have people, and so those themes were explored in that show, and it was good writing. Now, flash forward. Kevin Feige finally gets put in charge of Marvel. And one of the first laws he laid down was we don't make a movie or a TV show until the story's right. And the things we know we're going to have to change, we have to change them in a way that's believable. Yes, we're still going to piss off some comic book purists, but it's got to be believable.
I can't believe he just threw out the George Lucas playbook like that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So he very much went anti-Lucas. The technology certainly was there. And he also knew, I think, although I think he knew this, that during the course of the Marvel Studios run, first of all, he was brilliant in that he had this whole timeline figured out. Like, this is how we're going to do it, right? So the early Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr., which I thought was brilliant
It's a
casting.
masterpiece.
I was a little skeptical about Chris Evans because he'd been in the Fantastic Four movie, which I hated.
Well, not only that, Chris Evans's track record so far, as we had seen him, was Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
And Chris was playing the role like he had played every role before that, like his character in Losers, like his character in, I gotta say, one of my all-time favorite parody movies, Not Another Teen Movie, which I could talk about all day because that shit was hilarious. But
Well,
I was so skeptical too. And then when Captain America came out of the movie, as a purist, as a loyalist, I mean, justice was done to the character.
I can do this all day.
I could do this.
One
all
of my
day.
favorite lines
Yeah.
of any
They
superhero
captured
movie.
classic comic book Cap, and they put it in a movie,
Yeah.
and I was enamored.
So that is sort of an alternate take on the subject matter, is that I obviously adored Marvel in the comic books. I adored the grittiness of it. I always thought that Stan Lee, Louis D'Esposito, Alan Silvestri, all those guys really wanted to make these characters as human as possible. And people tried and failed for a long time, and then somebody finally got it right. And I'm so happy about that.
Oh, me
Yeah,
too.
they're not all home runs. Let's face it. Some of them are just okay.
I may argue some of that.
Well, feel free. I just, obviously you like some more than others.
Also, we do need to. I'm ahead of you guys because I'm enjoying the cigar way too much.
Yeah, we may be.
Yeah, we're getting there, but
It's
but-
so nice to be with guys who smoke faster than I do. I thought I was terrible, but you guys are way worse.
second, third.
White pepper is a lot more prominent.
I will say, I think you saw this, Brent, while I was fixing it, but I actually had a bit of a canoe issue in the middle of the cigar.
Oh,
Just all of a sudden, one side of the wrapper started burning faster than everything else, and I had to do a little surgery on it.
is that because it was just like maybe wrapped looser in that one section?
There's a lot of reasons why that can happen, but it's almost always based on construction, and believe it or not, it mostly has to do with the interior of the cigar.
Okay.
So the binder and the filler, if there's something in there that is causing it to burn faster or hotter, then that's going to impact the wrapper. So when that happens, it's almost always a construction issue. Now, a lot of guys will blame, we're sitting outside tonight, so the wind caused me to canoe.
Yeah.
And no, that's usually not the case at all. However, some people have odd smoking styles. They tend to overbite or underbite when they're on their cigar, so that can actually happen. And for guys that do, there's one guy that is a friend of mine, used to do that fairly frequently. He's like, well, what can I do? I'm like, turn your cigar.
Yes.
Just rotate your cigar.
So I'm
And
guilty.
I do that anyway.
I'm guilty of this, and I think this is one of the reasons why I smoke a cigar a little bit faster sometimes, is because I tend to I want more flavor in one hit. We've already discussed how I like a darker, richer cigar. So when I'm smoking a cigar where I feel like I'm not getting it right off the first hit, I'll hit, turn, hit, and then stop. And I think that speeds up the burn.
Well, so it's called double pumping. And so, that you're definitely smoking faster. Oh, I just thought of another one, you guys. When I was a kid, Saturday afternoons on a local cable television show or channel, it was Kung Fu movies.
Channel 11.
Kung Fu movies. Well, I wasn't here. I was down in the Houston area.
For us, it was Channel 11. It was KTVT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I need to actually go back and revisit some of those. But I have a feel because basically those movies caused me to become a martial artist. That and the fact that I was no good at team sports. And when I think when I was 6 or 7, in desperation, my dad stuck me in a local judo class that was taught by a guy whose name I can still remember. His name was Mike Law. and I think he was from Columbus, Ohio. And suddenly, when I didn't have to think about other people depending on me, I cleaned up. And so I became a martial artist for life. I studied martial arts all over the world, but it all started from watching those shows. And yes, we know the dubbing is bad, and yes, we know, but it was the heart that I loved about those movies.
I expected when I got my first fight, I was very disappointed that it didn't sound the way those kung fu movies did.
Does anyone have anything else to this topic they would like to add? Because if not, I think this is the perfect way to wrap up the show.
Well, I was gonna mention music.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. This might be an after hours episode, but hit it.
Yeah, so it's funny, kind of like, again, your perception of something when you're a kid, and the song comes on, it's got a great beat, you're singing along with the lyrics. Lyrics don't really register with you. Then as an adult, June bugs. Then as an adult, you listen to those songs, you go,
Yeah, no,
Oh.
slide him over to me by all means,
yeah,
please.
you're like, oh, well, that song's all about sex. Oh, well, that song's all about drugs. Oh, look, this song's about sex too. Like all your favorite songs from
This
when
is
you were a
about
kid.
sex and drugs.
This is about sex and drugs. Yeah, it's really funny, especially when you get teenagers and they start listening to music, and they're doing the same thing, right? You're like, this song is so overtly this bad subject, or this subject you really shouldn't be dealing with at your age or whatever, and they just don't get it.
So I will add to that. First of all, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Second of all, sometime in the late 90s, so there used to be, and I don't know if it still exists, on National Public Radio, a show called World Cafe.
Oh yeah,
And it's a music show. It's a music-centric
I
show.
listened to that.
They have, various artists on there, some very famous, some you never heard of. But they had a guy on there in 97 by the name of Robbie Fulks. And he had just come out with a new album called Southmouth. He's a Nashville guy. He's a sort of retro country music artist, or what they called alt country at the time. There was a part of the conversation where he talked about, as an adult, wanting to redeem songs that he hated as a kid. And so he talked about this one song. He goes, I was all anti-disco in that, I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. He goes, and then I became an adult. And I went back one day and I just happened to hear this song that I hated as a kid. And I actually listened to the lyrics. And it was so innocent and pure. And the song he was talking about was Dancing Queen by ABBA.
Oh,
Because if you actually listen to the lyrics,
Yeah.
when you are a teenager going out, the possibilities are endless and you are optimistic. The world has not crushed you under its heel. And so you still think something awesome might happen. That's what this song is all about. And then he did on his acoustic guitar, his version of Dancing Queen. And I have to tell you, it was one of the greatest things I ever heard. It was this sweet song about a teenager going out and just hoping something great happens tonight. That was the whole thing. It wasn't any more complicated than that. And so I loved that so much that I actually learned how to play his version of that song.
nice.
And then another one that I hated, that I personally hated in the 80s, I was not a Prince fan because I was a metal guy.
Mm.
My jam was Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and Crocus and all of that. I didn't have time for pop music, and I certainly didn't have time for a song called Purple Rain. But then, as an adult, I heard that song performed acoustically by a singer-songwriter out of Syracuse, New York, named Martin Sexton. And I loved it. I actually listened to the lyrics, and I immediately that night learned how to play that song. Well, this has been a much more wide-ranging conversation than I thought we were going to have. Because when you first brought this up, I thought I was just going to be cynical and talk about something I loved it as a kid that I hated as an adult. And it turns out that there definitely are those things, but there are also things that I loved as a kid that transferred mediums that eventually got to the place where I do love them. And then there's actually things that I didn't like as a kid that I love as an adult. So
Yeah.
well done to you, Mr. Donahoe,
Oh, thank you.
for picking a topic of conversation that turned out to be much more involved. That's going to do it for this episode of Nerfherders, you guys. Thanks so much for joining and tuning in. As always, we would love to hear from you. Is there a thing that you loved as a kid that changed for you when you became a grown-up? drop us a line at nerdherfers.com. Please go out and subscribe. You can get email alerts that will tell you when we are dropping a new episode. In the future, because Mr. Williams is hard at work on our website, we're going to have merch available. We're going to have giveaways available, but we want to start building an interactive community. So pick a topic, pick an episode, and give us your thoughts. We definitely want to hear from you, and we will talk about that at a future date. On behalf of Brent Williams, Micah Donahoe, and myself, Larry Brantley, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Nerdherfers. Micah, what's your sign off?
Live long and prosper.
Thank you, my friend, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye. This has been a production of Nerdherfers, copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No portion, and I do mean no portion of this broadcast may be used without permission. Please visit nerdherfers.com for more information and full legal disclaimer, you nerd.